Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephen Chia. I'm very happy to be here in Ukraine. It's my first time in Kiev. I think it's a beautiful city. So today we're going to talk a little bit about when you're implementing blockchain solutions, what are some of the features you need to think about when you're implementing your project on blockchain. So let's start. Well, I would not assume everyone know about blockchain, so I always start with two slides, very basic, okay? Essentially today, if you were to send emails or even to send a file, you know that when you hit send, your email or your file gets transferred from one computer to another, right? But today also, if you send a transaction, and I don't mean a financial transaction, it can even be non-financial in nature. When you send it, invariably you need a middleman. That middleman could be a bank, a payment gateway, or even a central authority, right? So blockchain actually, at its core, is a transaction network. It helps you process your transaction, and again, not necessarily a financial one, okay? And I'm sure you've probably seen this before. What we have currently in most systems today is centralized database where all your information, your transactions is stored in a centralized manner. And of course, blockchain changed that. Essentially, the reason why they call it distributed ledger technology is because they take what is stored in a centralized manner and distribute it across different nodes on a blockchain network. With that, you saw that blockchain technology makes it scalable, makes it tamper-proof because of the nature of the architecture. And there's another attribute, because a lot of the blockchain is based on the original fundamental idea of Bitcoin blockchain. So it's open source, therefore sometimes it's also a lower cost to run. The other thing that makes blockchain very unique is because of its nature of immutability. Now, immutability is essentially, when it's written, it cannot be changed, right? So these are the things that blockchain does really well, okay? But if you look at today's companies or projects that are powered by conventional systems, right? They're trying to move to blockchain. You know that blockchain actually needs to go beyond cryptocurrency, right? That means it needs to solve it from the transactional point of view, right? Second is, of course, most blockchains need you to probably have a blockchain degree or probably learn a language. So for enterprise, they don't have time to do that. For companies or for organizations which have current legacy systems, they also need transaction speed or processing speed, right? And of course, they need to be able to have a demand for it to be simple. That means the interface, how you talk to the blockchain has to be simple. Of course, most real-world working models needs to be able to be put on a blockchain. So if your blockchain is purely to move one digital currency or to move one digital asset from one wallet to another, it won't work as well. Of course, in business today, you always need the ability to have a system that's flexible, of course, low cost, and able to be repeated, replicated models, okay? So basically for NEM, we've always started as a blockchain technology solution first. It was built for enterprise grade, not just to move a digital currency. In fact, if you go to our NEM blockchain website, nem.io, you would see that we are just beyond a cryptocurrency, all right? So second, of course, one of the fundamental core of what NEM blockchain is all about is that it's API driven. So for those of you who are not familiar with this, API is actually the language of how computer programs talk to each other. This API approach helps with corporate or even small projects because it allows you to have the ability to have your program be powered by blockchain, but you don't have to learn the language of blockchain. You just need to know how the API talks to your program. Think of it as, for example, you want to build a bus or a truck. We are the engine that powers your application, all right? So let's switch gears a little bit. A lot of talk especially in corporate and enterprise solutions is about transaction speeds. And the number one complaint that everyone has about blockchain is, because you have so many computers working in a blockchain node, transaction speed is a problem, right? So let's break it down. Let's say, for example, you have a blockchain network that can process 200 transactions per second, right? If you do the math, you take it, multiply by 60 seconds for a minute, and then 60 minutes for an hour. At the end of the day, you will find that you would have probably 518 million transactions per second, correct? Now, this is actually version 1 of the NEM blockchain, right? We have a version 2, which we actually codename Catapult, all right? Catapult can do 4,000 transactions per second. So if you do the math again, that's a very big number, all right? So you always need to ask, even at 200 transactions per second, does your program or does your enterprise need that kind of firepower? Does it need that kind of processing speed? Just to give you a scale of comparison, MasterCard Visa roughly is around 25,000 per second, 25,000 transactions per second, right? So again, I always ask people who are trying to develop their software or their application on the blockchain, do you need that kind of firepower? So when people mention, oh, you know, you have only 200 transactions per second, it's not enough for me, right? So the fundamental question is, you ask yourself, does your program, does your application require the kind of transactions speed, right? This is how one aspect of it. The second aspect is, because on the blockchain, when you push transactions or you pull transactions on the blockchain, all right, that takes time, right? We solve it in a very different way, and this is actually one of the core features of our version 2 of the NEM blockchain, the Catapult. We invented something called the aggregated transactions, meaning when you have a transaction, let's say, for example, a typical one in the early version is, I have to, let's say the buyer is buying from a seller. I need to do 2 transactions. That means I need to do an exchange, a transaction, and then I need to do the final transaction with the seller, right? But in an aggregated transaction, it's one shot, all this happens all at once. Now this actually does 2 things. One is it actually saves a lot of processing time because you're doing it one shot. Second is it reduces the amount of faults, if any, right? So here's an example of let's say a automatic transaction where the middle person, I think in the case of this is app that says that I'm going to select, I'm going to deduct a fee if you make the transaction between Bob and Alice. So this is a very interesting solution to how to solve enterprise problem using aggregated transactions, okay? And this is actually reduces a lot of time taken. The other thing that we do to make it enterprise grade, blockchain. Essentially, we know that signatures, multi-signature wallet is now becoming increasingly more important, especially for enterprise or organization use. That means just like you have a joint account where 2 or 3 people sign off before you can release the payment. It's very common in any organization or company, right? But we have a multi-signature wallet, but we took it one more level. That means we created a multi-level, multi-signature wallet in Catapult. What that means is you can actually have very, very creative solutions that allows multiple parties and multiple stakeholders to sign off a transaction all in one shot. Because this actually helps you to create even very, very complex systems like a supply chain, right? Where not 1, but 2 or even 3 stakeholders have to sign off before a supply chain transaction happens. Now, this actually helps it to make the blockchain, the NEM blockchain, more robust for enterprise or big, large organizations use, right? So this is, I don't know whether the video comes out. Well, maybe it does. Okay. So what we did was, how we were able to do that is essentially in the latest version of NEM blockchain, we created 4 layers of it. Of course, you have the core, which is the NEM blockchain, and then you have the MongoDB, which is actually a database, and then with the API server. This is actually the development of Catapult in the past 18 months. This is a collapsed video. It took 120 seconds of it. That's how long it took for us to build it. So today, if you're a developer, whether in an organization or if you are a startup company developing on blockchain, you can actually sign up to be a developer to preview this developer's version of Catapult. Okay, so I encourage you to take a look at it. It's kind of cool. Yeah, I like it. So this, I think, 18 months worth of work collapsed in 120 seconds, right? So, of course, we created something called another layer. The final layer is actually any apps that you create, a NEM apps and a like client, all right? So, yeah, it's actually our 3 developers called developers in action, right? And actually, one of them is actually called Jaguar, so he has a little Jaguar there, right? Okay, so this is essentially, I think we have it on our NEM website, but basically this is the entire ecosystem of what is possible, right? This is what are some of the solutions that are out there that's powered by NEM blockchain today, right? And there are many, many more. So here's a few examples of it. Because I'm from Malaysia and I'm from Asia, so I'll show some Asian examples. This project is called LoyalCoin. It's actually a loyalty program on the blockchain. And basically they created a system where a loyalty program can exist on the blockchain, and individual of their customers can transfer that loyal token or loyal point from one to another. Okay, so they were doing for Starbucks, and Grab is like Uber here, and Petron is their petrol station, right? Here's another one. Pundi is a Indonesian project. They developed a next generation point of sale terminal. And basically this terminal can read and write, credit cards, debit cards, plus it can also do things like bank cards and digital currencies of any sort. So this is powered by NEM blockchain because they have a QR code reader on the side of the terminal that can read a card that has a stored value of a digital currency, right? So this project is called Pundi X, and they already started to ship the terminals all over the Asian region and even I think in Europe, right? Here's another one. It's powered by NEM blockchain. Basically, Proxima X is the project. It's a decentralized storage. What happens is if you are enterprise, you want to put your transactions on the blockchain, chances are it will be on the NEM blockchain. But where do you store your data? That means where do you store your invoices? Where do you store your customer data? So Proxima X is actually a system that can allow you to store those records on a decentralized, secure manner. So that's what Proxima X is all about. At the same time, they developed a layer above this storage where you can write multiple applications so that you can do, for example, video streaming. That means your video is stored in a decentralized storage, but the application can use that to stream it out, right? You can even do things like a registry, like you can store the registry certificates on the blockchain, and at the same time, people can use your application to review those documents if they wish, right? So now you have a system for corporate or for enterprise where you would have the transactions on the NEM blockchain, then you have the storage or the customer data on the Proxima X platform, right? So Is it failing? I don't think so. So you just need to solve some of this. Now, the bottom three is up to you all, okay? If you need to have simplicity, you need to have working models, it's up to corporates and small companies or medium-sized companies to embrace and develop applications powered by blockchain, right? So the green parts, we leave it to you guys, right? So with this, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to share about NEM blockchain. We have a booth here on the other side, so come visit us, get a cool t-shirt or candy from us. We'll be more than happy to answer the questions that you have. NEM actually is existing in 6 regions around the world. We have a ground team here headed by Anton. He's our NEM Ukraine team. So if you are developing on the blockchain and you need a blockchain or you need a team to come and share more about what NEM can do for you, feel free to say hi to us on the booth next door on the other side. All right? With this, thank you very much. Yeah.
That was incredibly interesting, Alan. Thank you very much. It was very strictly to the timing. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So, any questions? Oh wow.
Hi, Stefan. It was a nice presentation. My question is more about not the technology, but about the adoption by itself. So there are multiple parties who are involved in, so it's about multiple parties coming together. How easy or challenging was it to, it's not about the technology integration, but about people accepting and trusting that, okay, this will work for them. How challenging was it for NEM blockchain to be used by all these different corporate cases?
Well, I think not just in this part of the world, even in Asia, the biggest challenge for corporate embracing blockchain, believe it or not, is not technical. It's actually mindset, right? They just need, it's just like when in the early days of cloud computing, there was a lot of resistance of corporate, of even government systems. They say, no, we don't trust somebody to put on the cloud, right? But now, storing something on the cloud, it's normal practice, right? Because it has been proven. Same thing now with blockchain, right? Many corporates are exploring. I think the best way to integrate or to introduce blockchain to corporates is essentially let them pilot it. Let them test it on small little test net. In fact, we do have a test net on the NEM blockchain. It's kind of cool. You can press a button and create $100 million if you wish. Use that as a means to convince the corporate or your customers or even your organization to test it. Test an idea or test a small system within your company. It doesn't need to be a big overhaul of your system in your company, but use a particular aspect that is giving you a lot of problems within the organization and test that. And put it on the blockchain, write a small application. The nice thing about it is that on the NEM blockchain, because it's API driven, you can get it going very quickly. You don't have to learn a language like how you do with other blockchains where you have to learn a specific language. And that takes you time. Because we are taking the API approach, it makes it very easy. Yeah, both big and small companies.
Thank you. More questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chia, for your speech. And I have a question regarding the transaction performance. And you said that current speed of 200 transactions and upcoming release will have 4,000 transactions per second. Do I understand correct that this performance is shared by all applications that utilizes your blockchain? So the more application will connect to your blockchain, the less transaction speed they will get each of them.
Okay, that's a good question. Actually, there are two aspects I did not share. Is that, of course, we have the public chain and the private chain. So chances are when you're doing corporate development or where you're using the blockchain for your enterprise or even for your industry, let's say maybe insurance industry, right? Chances are it will be on the private chain, right? Now, when it's on the private chain, you have full control of the nodes. So it does not mean that all your applications have to be on the public chain. It could be that you're developing a system that is just running within your ecosystem. Now, when that happens, basically your choice, chances are very high that you will be on the private chain. Now, when it's on the private chain, you control all the nodes. You can put all the nodes on very high-grade servers, and you can actually even go beyond the 4,000 transactions per second within your ecosystem. Of course, you're right. The question is that if you have it on the public chain, for most transactions, it will be shared among the many people who are using the public chain. So think of it as the internet. You know, it all slows down if all of us all decided to use it all at once, right, at the 12 o'clock midnight or something. So that is a consideration that you have to make whenever you are deploying a system that's powered by blockchain, right? Now, for most enterprise that we have been talking to, chances are they still want to have a certain degree of control. And when they deploy it, because they want that degree of control, usually they end up being a private chain because of that. So for us, the Catapult is available on the permission or private chain. And there are companies already exploring how to use it, especially for things like supply chain, traceability and all that.
You, last question, if any.
Okay, because I have come across several examples of private blockchains, and public blockchains are always questioned about the scalability. So NAM also has a public blockchain solutions. So for what situations the public blockchain can be interesting, and what is the trade-off apart from the speed? Is it about the cost as well that is going to be a challenging part?
Well, actually, one of the things for the NAM blockchain on our private chain, on our public chain, is that regularly this is where the NAM Foundation comes into play. We look at the transaction fees, and we regularly update it so that it's kept at a low rate. We've done that a few times over the past of the last year or so, where if our currency, which is the native currency of NAM, if it goes up, we actually reduce the transaction fee accordingly. So that's what we've been doing constantly on the public chain. Now that's more on the cost side. The second is actually on the private chain, you get to decide. If you don't want transaction fee, it's your own network, right? So that's where the option is, especially for enterprise, okay?
Good,
Right.
thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you, yeah,
Thank
all right.
you for great questions. I hope you all enjoy your stay here, because it's your
Yeah,
first
thank
time
you.
here, yeah?